Here's another job score. Are you listening in Michigan and Ohio and across the country? Here's another job score. Obama, 250,000. Romney, 0. Now, the agreement the administration made with the management, labor, and environmental groups to double car mileage, that was a good deal too. It will cut your gas prices in half, your gas bill. No matter what the price is, if you double the mileage of your car, your bill will be half what it would have been. It will make us more energy independent. It will cut greenhouse gas emissions. And according to several analyses over the next 20 years, it'll bring us another 500,000 good new jobs into the American economy. The president's energy strategy, which he calls all of the above, is helping too. The boom in oil and gas production, combined with greater energy efficiency, has driven oil imports to a near 20-year low and natural gas production to an all-time high. And renewable energy production has doubled. Of course, we need a lot more new jobs. But there are already more than 3 million jobs open and unfilled in America, mostly because the people who apply for them don't yet have the required skills to do them. So even as we get Americans more jobs, we have to prepare more Americans for the new jobs that are actually going to be created. The old economy is not coming back. We've got to build a new one and educate people to do those jobs. The President and his Education Secretary have supported community colleges and employers in working together to train people for jobs that are actually open in their communities. And even more important, after a decade in which exploding college costs have increased the dropout rate so much that the percentage of our young people with 4-year college degrees has gone down so much that we have dropped to 16th in the world in the percentage of young people with college degrees. So, the president's student loan reform is more important than ever. Here's what it does. Here's what it does. You need to tell every voter where you live about this. It lowers the cost of federal student loans, and even more important, it gives students the right to repay those loans as a clear, fixed, low percentage of their income for up to 20 years. Now, what does this mean? What does this mean? Think of it. It means no one will ever have to drop out of college again for fear they can't repay their debt. And it means that if someone wants to take a job with a modest income, a teacher, a police officer, if they want to be a small town doctor in a little rural area, they won't have to turn those jobs down because they don't pay enough to repay the debt. Their debt obligation will be determined by their salary. This will change the future for young Americans. I don't know about you, but on all these issues, I know we're better off because President Obama made the decisions he did. Now, that brings me to health care. And the Republicans call it derisively Obamacare. They say it's a government takeover, a disaster, and that if we'll just elect them, they'll repeal it. Well, are they right? Let's take a look at what's actually happened so far. First, individuals and businesses have already gotten more than $1 billion in refunds from insurance companies because the new law requires 80 to 85% of your premium to go to your health care, not profits or promotion. The gains are even greater than that because a bunch of insurance companies have applied to lower their rates to comply with the requirement. Second, more than 3 million young people between 19 and 25 are insured for the first time because their parents' policies can cover them. Third, millions of seniors are receiving preventive care, all the way from breast cancer screenings to tests for heart problems and scores of other things, and younger people are getting them too. Fourth, soon the insurance companies, not the government, the insurance companies will have millions of new customers, many of them middle-class people with pre-existing conditions who never could get insurance before. Now, finally, listen to this. For the last 2 years, after going up at 3 times the rate of inflation for a decade, for the last 2 years, health care costs have been under 4% in both years for the first time in 50 years. So, let me ask you something. Are we better off because President Obama fought for health care reform? You bet we are. Now, there were 2 other attacks on the president in Tampa I think deserve an answer. First, both Governor Romney and Congressman Ryan attacked the president for allegedly robbing Medicare of $716 billion. That's the same attack they leveled against the Congress in 2010. And they got a lot of votes on it. But it's not true. Look, here's what really happened. You be the judge. Here's what really happened. There were no cuts to benefits at all. None. What the president did was to save money by taking the recommendations of a commission of professionals to cut unwarranted subsidies to providers and insurance companies that were not making people healthier and were not necessary to get the providers to provide the service. And instead of raiding Medicare, he used the savings to close the donut hole in the Medicare drug program. And you all got to listen carefully to this. This is really important. And to add 8 years to the life of the Medicare Trust Fund so it is solvent till 2024. So President Obama and the Democrats didn't weaken Medicare, they strengthened Medicare. Now, when Congressman Ryan looked into that TV camera and attacked President Obama's Medicare savings as, quote, the biggest, coldest power play, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Because that $716 billion is exactly to the dollar the same amount of Medicare savings that he has in his own budget. You got to get one thing. It takes some brass to attack a guy for doing what you did. Now, you're having a good time, but this is getting serious. I want you to listen. It's important, because a lot of people believe this stuff. Now, at least on this issue, and this one issue, Governor Romney has been consistent. He attacked President Obama, too. But he actually wants to repeal those savings and give the money back to the insurance company. He wants to go back to the old system which means we'll reopen the donut hole and force seniors to pay more for drugs. And we'll reduce the life of the Medicare Trust Fund by 8 full years. So, if he's elected, and if he does what he promised to do, Medicare will now grow broke in 2016. Think about that. That means, after all, we won't have to wait until their voucher program kicks in 2023 to see the end of Medicare as we know it. They're going to do it to us sooner than we thought. Now, folks, this is serious because it gets worse. And you won't be laughing when I finish telling you this. They also want to block grant Medicaid and cut it by 1/3 over the coming 10 years. Of course, that's going to really hurt a lot of poor kids. But that's not all. A lot of folks don't know it, but nearly 2/3 of Medicaid is spent on nursing home care for Medicare seniors who are eligible for Medicaid. It's going to end Medicare as we know it. And a lot of that money is also spent to help people with disabilities, including a lot of middle-class families whose kids have Down syndrome or autism or other severe conditions. And honestly, just think about it. If that happens, I don't know what those families are going to do. So I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to do everything I can to see that it doesn't happen. We can't let it happen. We can't. Now, wait a minute. Let's look at the other big charge the Republicans made. It's a real doozy. They actually have charged and run ads saying that President Obama wants to weaken the work requirements in the welfare reform bill I signed that moved millions of people from welfare to work. Oh, wait, you need to know, here's what happened. Nobody ever tells you what really happened. Here's what happened. When some Republican governors asked if they could have waivers to try new ways to put people on welfare back to work, the Obama administration listened, because we all know it's hard for even people with good work histories to get jobs today, so moving folks from welfare to work is a real challenge. And the administration agreed to give waivers to those governors and others only if they had a credible plan to increase employment by 20%, and they could keep the waivers only if they did increase employment. Now, did I make myself clear? The requirement was for more work, not less. So, this is personal to me. We moved millions of people off welfare. It was one of the reasons that in the 8 years I was president, we had 100 times as many people move out of poverty into the middle class than happened under the previous 12 years. 100 times as many. It's a big deal. But I am telling you, the claim that President Obama weakened welfare reform's work requirement is just not true. But they keep on running ads claiming it. You want to know why? Their campaign poster said, "We are not going to let our campaign be dictated by fact checkers." Now, finally I can say, that is true. I couldn't have said it better myself. And I hope you and every American within the sound of my voice remembers it every time they see one of those ads, and it turns into an ad to re-elect Barack Obama and keep the fundamental principles of personal empowerment and moving everybody who can get a job into work as soon as we can. Now, let's talk about the debt. Today, interest rates are low, lower than the rate of inflation. People are practically paying us to borrow money, hold their money for them. But it will become a big problem when the economy grows and interest rates start to rise. We got to deal with this big long-term debt problem, or it will deal with us. It'll gobble up a bigger and bigger percentage of the federal budget we'd rather spend on education and health care and science and technology. We got to deal with it. Now, what has the president done? He has offered a reasonable plan of $4 trillion in debt reduction over a decade, with $2.5 trillion coming from, for every $2.5 trillion in spending cuts, he raises $1 in new revenues, 2.5 to 1. And he has tight controls on future spending. That's the kind of balanced approach proposed by the Simpson-Bowles Commission, a bipartisan commission. Now, I think this plan is way better than Governor Romney's plan. First, the Romney plan fails the first test of fiscal responsibility. The numbers just don't add up. I mean, consider this. What would you do if you had this problem? Somebody says, oh, we got a big debt problem, we got to reduce the debt. So what's the first thing he says we're going to do? Well, to reduce the debt, we're going to have another $5 trillion in tax cuts, heavily weighted to upper income people. So we'll make the debt hole bigger before we start to get out of it. Now, when you say, what are you going to do about this $5 trillion you just added on? They say, oh, we'll make it up by eliminating loopholes in the tax code. So then you ask, well, which loopholes and how much? You know what they say? See me about that after the election. I'm not making it up. That's their position. See me about that after the election. Now, people ask me all the time how we got 4 surplus budgets in a row. What new ideas did we bring to Washington? I always give a one-word answer. Arithmetic. If they stay with this $5 trillion tax cut plan in a debt reduction plan, the arithmetic tells us, no matter what they say, one of 3 things is about to happen. One, assuming they try to do what they say they'll do, get rid of, cover it by deductions, cutting those deductions. One, they'll have to eliminate so many deductions, like the ones for home mortgages and charitable giving, that middle-class families will see their tax bills go up an average of $2,000, while anybody who makes $3 million or more will see their tax bill go down $250,000. Or, 2, they'll have to cut so much spending that they'll obliterate the budget for the national parks, for ensuring clean air, clean water, safe food, safe air travel. They'll cut way back on Pell Grants, college loans, early childhood education, child nutrition programs, all the programs that help to empower middle-class families and help poor kids. Oh, they'll cut back on investments in roads and bridges and science and technology and biomedical research. That's what they'll do. They'll hurt the middle class and the poor and put the future on hold to give tax cuts to upper income people who've been getting it all along. Or 3, in spite of all the rhetoric, they'll just do what they've been doing for more than 30 years. They'll go in and cut the taxes way more than they cut spending, especially with that big defense increase, and they'll just explode the debt and weaken the economy. And they'll destroy the federal government's ability to help you by letting interest gobble up all your tax payments. Don't you ever forget when you hear them talking about this, that Republican economic policies quadrupled the national debt before I took office, in the 12 years before I took office. And double the debt in the 8 years after I left, because it defied arithmetic. It was a highly inconvenient thing for them in our debates that I was just a country boy from Arkansas, and I came from a place where people still thought 2 and 2 was 4. It's arithmetic. We simply cannot afford to give the reins of government to someone who will double down on trickle down. Now, think about this. President Obama's plan cuts the debt, honors our values, brightens the future of our children, our families, and our nations. It's a heck of a lot better. It passes the arithmetic test, and far more important, it passes the values test. My fellow Americans, all of us in this grand hall and everybody watching at home, when we vote in this election, we'll be deciding what kind of country we want to live in. If you want a winner-take-all, you're on your own society, you should support the Republican ticket. But if you want a country of shared opportunities and shared responsibility, we're all in this together society, you should vote for Barack Obama and Joe Biden. If you want every American to vote, and you think it is wrong to change voting procedures just to reduce the turnout of younger, poorer, minority, and disabled voters, you should support Barack Obama. If you think the president was right to open the doors of American opportunity to all those young immigrants brought here when they were young so they can serve in the military or go to college, you must vote for Barack Obama. If you want a future of shared prosperity, where the middle class is growing and poverty is declining, where the American dream is really alive and well again, and where the United States maintains its leadership as a force for peace and justice and prosperity in this highly competitive world, you have to vote for Barack Obama. Look, I love our country so much, and I know we're coming back. For more than 200 years, through every crisis, we've always come back. People have predicted our demise ever since George Washington was criticized for being a mediocre surveyor with a bad set of wooden false teeth. And so far, every single person that's bet against America has lost money, because we always come back. We come through every fire a little stronger and a little better. And we do it because in the end we decide to champion the cause for which our founders pledged their lives, their fortunes, their sacred honor. The cause of forming a more perfect union. My fellow Americans, if that is what you want, if that is what you believe, you must vote and you must re-elect President Barack Obama. God bless you, and God bless America.
obviously very, very excited, the former president of the United States. He spoke, for about 48 minutes. But I'll tell you, I've been watching this former president of the United States, going back to 1992, when I was CNN's White House correspondent. And I have to tell you, this may have been the best speech I have ever heard Bill Clinton deliver over all of these years. And I listened to so many of his speeches during his 8 years as president, and to so many of his speeches in the years that followed. The president of the United States went out there to shake his hand, to thank him. He is truly, truly grateful for what Bill Clinton has done for this president, and certainly Democrats are enthused right now. Let's go up to the podium right now. Give us a little bit of flavor, Candy. You're up on the podium.
Well, you know, I think the flavor is exactly what you're hearing and seeing. Interesting to me, they didn't really linger to milk the moment. They still have business to do. They've got to actually have the delegates vote. Not that there's anything that will be any surprises for the outcome. Effective speech. If you are an avid Democrat, a true believer Democrat, and this entire place is full of them, that was a moment with former President Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. Probably the most effective part of the speech, I think, as far as the audience is, at least as far as the audience was concerned that's viewing this, is when Bill Clinton looked at the camera and said, I know there's still a lot of hurt out there. I understand it. But if you believe me, the economy is going to get better. Listen here to this crowd.
You know,
the crowd getting fired up. We are fired up, and this certainly is a very fired up crowd. Paul Begala, let's listen in as they. This is the hug here. Paul Begala, you've heard a lot of speeches by President Clinton. What do you think?
Yeah, you know, I believe this man's got a future in this business. He's a comer. He's a rising star. Everything a Democrat could want, everything I think the president could want, and everything that he needed. I don't know anybody else that can be as substantive and yet as riveting.
The level of detail in the speech was really quite surprising, at least to me, and yet there was a personability to it.
That's what's remarkable. I was over there this afternoon, and he was drilling down on like which study says about 500,000 jobs in new energy. Are we 14th in the world or 16th in the young people graduating from college? I mean, it was as substantive a session as I've had with him in 20 years, and yet he gets up there on the stage, he feeds off that crowd, and I think he accomplished every political objective. But what I loved about it is he didn't insult the audience. He raised their expectations. In fact, there's moments when the crowd was cheering, he's like, no, come on, quiet. This is important. I want you to pay attention to this. So he treated his audience like grown-ups, and I think they responded.
David Gergen, you worked in the Clinton White House as well?
Well, it's a remarkable story now, isn't it? He's been giving speeches for over 20 years. And there's just simply no one better in America. He's been that for 20 years. Plus, this was, I think, the most influential and effective speech he's given since he left the presidency. And if the electorate is still movable, he moved it.
I got to point out, they're doing the roll call right now. We're obviously monitoring it, not that there's any question about what's going to happen. But
yeah, to go on with it, he clearly, and I think Barack Obama was right to ask him to do it. This is the first time ever, by the way, that a former president has nominated the next president.
Right.
It's really interesting, and I think a lot more of them will do it now. but the point is, he told the Obama story better than President Obama has ever told it in terms of the record. But I think perhaps even more important was his attack on the Ryan Romney plan, in effect. You know, all along, Republicans have been worried that they were vulnerable with the Ryan budget. He saw the opening and drove a Mack truck right straight through.
Well, he also...
I would recommend to my friend Paul here, tonight when everybody leaves, lock the door. You don't have to come back tomorrow.
Yeah.
This convention is done. This will be the moment that probably reelected Barack Obama. Bill Clinton saved the Democratic Party once. It was going too far left. He came in, the New Democrats took it to the center. He did it again tonight.
Let's listen in just a roll call for a bit, just starting.
and nurtured by blood, sweat, and tears. Alabama has more black elected officials per capita than any state in the nation. Where the right to vote is worth dying for. A state where the Republicans have a grand design to suppress, dilute, undermine, and eliminate the right to vote. That too, Alabamians and others are ready to fight for. We now have the opportunity to present to this nation 69 votes for the next president of the United States, our current president, the Honorable Barack Obama. Thank you.
Alabama casts 69 votes for Obama. Alaska, you have 24 votes.
I'm Don Gray for the Alaska Democratic Party. Alaska, the great land, the energy storehouse of the nation, the energy state that will produce 50% of its energy, its electricity by 2025 from renewable energy. Thank you, President Obama. Ancestral home of the first people of the
While
Alaska.
we're watching this, we'll obviously continue our conversation. John King, you've again, in Gloria Borges, you've seen a lot of Clinton speeches.
I spent half my life covering Bill Clinton. And love him or not, and there are a lot of people out in the country in the not column. He was a polarizing guy when he left office. He's redeemed himself a bit in the post-presidency, but you have to remember when he left. Love him or not, he is unique. As David said, in his generation, he is unique. There's nobody like him. Like every Clinton speech, it could use an editor. But like every Clinton speech, it was aimed like a hammer on nails at what he views as the problems. Remember, he's not just a president. He's not just a former governor. He used to be fond of telling you, he calls me Johnny, I always call him governor, that I was George McGovern's campaign manager and this and that. And he likes to manage campaigns. What did he do? A direct appeal to Michigan and Ohio on the auto bailout. A direct appeal to young voters. We talked about that earlier, how the turnout is. He knows the problems President Obama faces in the electorate, and he went at it like a campaign manager. And the question is, can he move votes? Alex says lock the doors. I'm not so sure, just in the sense that there's such a tiny slice of the electorate out there that is movable. Are they going to listen to a former president? The president is an incumbent. One other point. President Clinton, and Paul knows this well, George H.W. Bush in 1992 made the very case he made tonight, saying the numbers are getting better, you just don't feel it yet. The economy is getting better, you just don't feel it yet. However, Bill Clinton was a very effective politician with Ross Perot's help in saying, don't believe him. Is Mitt Romney up to the challenge? Can he do what Bill Clinton did in 1992?
We got a guest. John Kerry's down on the floor with one of our correspondents. I think it's with Brianna Keeler from I'm sorry, Kay Baldwin. Kay, take it away.
Hey there, Anderson. Thank you. I'm here with Senator John Kerry, the senator from Massachusetts, also the Democratic nominee 8 years ago. Senator, thank you so much for joining me. President Clinton spoke very passionately tonight for President Obama. He also spoke very passionately on your behalf 8 years ago. What did you take away from the speech? How did he do? Did he make the case for 4 more years for President Obama?
Spectacularly. I think the president laid out all of the facts in a very methodical, very personal, very quiet way, all of it factual, and I think he just destroyed the basis of the Romney approach to the economy. I mean, he made it clear the arithmetic doesn't add up. It was the same policy that got us into trouble, and you can't reduce the deficit. It will hurt seniors. It'll undo Medicare. It won't create the jobs. I thought he did a great job of connecting the dots between all of the things President Obama is doing and where the nation needs to go. And the most important thing was what he said as an ex-president, that he couldn't, no president could have dealt better with the challenges we have and have set our country on a better course. And the difference will be made over the course of these next few years.
Now, Senator, let me ask you this. One thing that President Clinton also hit on, he hit Republicans very hard, talking about blaming Republicans for obstructionism, for the gridlock in Washington. As you know, it's a two-way street, and Republicans have had a lot of criticism towards President Obama for not reaching across the aisle more. Does he need to step up more?
Let me just be very, very clear. The president did step across the aisle. He put a $4 trillion deal on the table, and Speaker John Boehner and Paul Ryan, congressman, walked away from that deal. I served on the super committee. I know what we put on the table. Grover Norquist and their pledge prevented them from making an agreement because they would not do a balanced deal which included any revenue at all. No revenue, none, not even 10 to 1. So Americans need to look at the reality of what